Good evening. Welcome to Health Quest. I'm Deborah Arneson, your host for tonight. And tonight we have another wonderful show for you. We have Ann Rickman with the Rickman Center for Neuro and Biofeedback. And this is just such an exciting, wonderful process that I really feel that it's something that's so invaluable. We have to completely share this with our viewing audience because it's so unheard of, and it's such a simple, wonderful, passive way to receive healing, actually.
Exactly. Beautiful way to put it.
It's wonderful for children who have ADD and ADHD and hyperactivity, and we were talking about autism, you know, at the very end of our last show last week. And there's so many children with autism on the rise. I want to say since 1990, it's up 700%.
Oh, wow, I didn't hear that statistic.
It's horrible. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So again, you know, we can always talk about the whys and wherefores, but the point is, to do neurofeedback or biofeedback has completely helped to change the brainwave pattern of these children. And what we'll start with, maybe, if you don't mind, Ann, is giving our viewing audience, once again, a little bit of history on neuro or biofeedback. What's the history behind this, and how did you come to be so involved in something so wonderful, helping kids, which is, you know, what it should be all about?
Neurofeedback began in the early 60s, began experimenting, looking for ways to help people with seizure disorder.
Okay.
And once they found that people with seizure disorder have sleep problems, and cats were then used because cats sleep so much. So
So they wanted to study the cat's brainwaves because they're always sleeping and they don't have any problem sleeping.
Exactly.
Okay.
So Dr. Barry Sturman used cats, had electrodes implanted, and saw that suddenly that the cats were producing every cat was producing a particular brainwave pattern all the time. And he was, you know, learning a lot about it. At about that time, late 60s, NASA was having problems with fuel, creating seizures in people who worked with the rockets.
Wow.
And they sent the fuel to Dr. Sturman. He worked with his cats. Those cats that he had trained previously had a 70% higher level of tolerance to the fuel than those cats that he had just picked up. So from that point on, they began working with seizure disorder people, and from that point, they started finding normal controls, and some of the normal controls had a lot of the same behavior that people with seizure activity.
So could seizures be both a question of scarring on the brain as well as brainwave patterns that are disassociated and kind of spastic?
Well, what happens with anybody when there is a problem is that the brainwaves are what I call dysregulated, unbalanced, whatever word you'd like to use, any politically correct word that would, you know, fit in that category. And seizures can certainly scar, which means that there's going to be a barrier, an actual physical barrier, which is not going to let the brainwaves follow the pattern that they're supposed to be following. So, yeah, there's going to be that kind of a situation.
So, if I were to come see you, because I'd love to do this just to see how you do this, and I saw my brainwaves, should they look like something in particular? Should they be even, or should they be, do you see colors or just the waves?
No colors, unfortunately. There is a colored pattern that is done with a program called QEEG that shows the brain waves, the high frequency, the low frequency ones. I have a monitor. I use electrodes. I have a monitor that shows the brainwave patterns. We have a raw brainwave, and then it's filtered out for the lower ones, the middle ones, and then the high ones. The high brainwave frequencies.
There are 3 different brainwave patterns.
Right.
Okay.
The high frequency usually represents tension, and you can see that going a lot.
Really?
And
what is the effect of that on the body then? It creates what? Just a disturbance everywhere because it's the power center.
I mean, people who are aware of what stress and tension can do to our body, it just inhibits. It interferes with speech. just general conversational speech. It interferes with ability to think things through. Stress and tension can just create havoc in whatever we do. And then it also can affect sleep. And of course, if we don't get enough sleep, our body doesn't rejuvenate. And I just heard something that fat can't break down if we don't have enough sleep. So then we tend to gain weight. And there's all
it's a
these
catch-22.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
interesting. Wow, so this is good for seizures, it's good for hyperactivity, it's good, how about depression?
Depression, definitely. Depression is probably one of the symptoms that responds very favorably.
Really?
It's
in a short period of time?
In a short period of time, right.
That's great.
I have a lot of things that respond favorably, but I think depression responds in a shorter period of time.
So this is just a hypothesis, but would the hypothesis possibly be that, you know, our brains have this archive of memory, and they do remember how they should be functioning, but because of all the stressors or maybe the radiation we're exposed to or the toxins we have breathing in our air and in our food choices and our water supply, it's altering our biochemistry, and the brain is probably a little disturbed by all of that. But it comes back once it sees the pattern, and it's like, I remember you.
Right.
This is how it was when I roamed I was a caveman. And I roamed around and I hunted down little lions and I ate nuts and berries.
I think that that's a pretty good hypothesis. I mean, what happens is that, birth history, if there's any kind of birth trauma. A child, is going to have, from birth, unfortunately, can have these dysregulated patterns. And it's sort of like a trajectory of a rocket. If you're on the path, you're on the path. If you veer, the further along you go, the further away you're going to be.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. So from birth, you have a problem, it's going to be there unless we can do something to change it. Psychological trauma, a parent leaving, a child thinking it's abandonment, that's a trauma. That's a real problem. Children who have been abused in any way, trauma in that regard. And then just
life's traumas.
Life's traumas.
Everybody has enough.
Illnesses. One of the things that's fairly problematic is that these ear infections that kids are getting, and they don't even have to have ear infections. We have so many kids who have allergies, and they have asthma, and they get colds with upper respiratory, infections. And what happens is that it's hard to hear, and you can hear, but you have to really, pay attention. And as you're working hard to pay attention, you're actually slowing down your brain waves processing of what you're hearing. So you've learned a new pattern, and now your brain is, even though you don't have the ear infection anymore, your brain is processing what it hears on a much slower basis. So it's a learning procedure as well.
And every time you have some kind of a trauma like that to the brain, it probably picks that up, and now it starts working differently.
Right, exactly. It's
so
like
think about life. I mean, just like living on this planet, your brainwaves are like, I'm coming over tomorrow. Okay. What's the difference between neurofeedback and biofeedback?
Biofeedback uses other body functions like sweat. If your hands get clammy, it measures that. Galvanic skin responses. It measures temperature. It measures sometimes heart rate, muscle tension, where neurofeedback only works with the brain. And because it's the control center of our body, I kind of believe that it's a little bit more powerful. Because galvanics, anything, temperature, anything has to go through the brain in order to get its information. Yeah.
So what types of brain waves are worked with using this program?
What we try to do is strengthen the concentration brain waves.
What is that called?
Those are the beta brain waves.
Beta. How many are there?
We have a low beta, which is called the SMR, which stands for sensory motor response. And then there's the higher beta. And in frequency, it ranges from like about 12 hertz all the way up to about 18
So
or
beta
20.
is the deepest and the lowest?
No, it's not the lowest. It's in the mid-range, actually.
It is. And where's theta from there?
Theta is below. Theta.
Okay. And
so
alpha is below that.
No. All right, let me
I'm
go
very
again.
confused.
Delta is our lowest. That's our
All right.
sleep brainwaves.
Okay.
Then we have theta, which is our daydreaming brainwaves.
Okay.
Then we go into the beta,
Betas.
which is, oh, I'm sorry, then there's alpha. I'm sorry, I
Okay.
forgot alpha, which is kind of like
Delta,
a
beta,
relaxed
alpha.
sort of awareness, but it's not a high alert.
Okay.
Then the beta, which starts at around 12 frequency.
Which is where we function most of the time.
Right, this is where, when we're awake, we're functioning in beta.
Okay.
And it goes up to about, let's say, 20 hertz.
So how high should a beta wave be?
As long as it's in its range, that's
It's
fine.
okay.
What happens is that sometimes delta or theta are just flying off the handle.
You're kidding.
Yeah, they're just firing up so frequently that they prevent the concentration from being able to
Interesting.
work its way in there and do its job. So if you have somebody,
But wouldn't they make people sleepy?
that's exactly right. That's what I was
Okay.
just, you know, if somebody isn't getting enough sleep, we can go back there again. Then what happens is that they get up the next morning, they're sleepy, and so their brain waves are kind of in that mode, and it takes some time to get functioning, and in the meantime the brain is saying, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, and they finally wake up, and then it's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're suddenly bright and cheery, and they're ready to start the day, but it's now nighttime, and they know they have to go to sleep.
Got it.
So they go into bed to go to sleep, and they're awake, and they can't go to sleep.
Wow. So in people who have sleep disturbances, a lot of my clients can't go to bed at night, especially like my people who are flight attendants or pilots who fly especially across the ocean. Their circadian rhythm, their time clock is just goofy.
Yeah.
You know, and they really can't get to bed before 1 or 2 in the morning, which we know does a lot of damage on every level. So it would help with those patternings too.
Absolutely.
Oh, I got a bunch of people who are saying, oh,
That's
very
great.
serious.
That's good. We can really.
I have one poor guy who cannot get to sleep before 2. And I've done valerian root, Calmatrol. We
well,
tried
if he's
rescue
in a
remedy.
pattern, he's not probably going to be able to do
I
it. The
told him.
only thing that we can do is regulate it so that maybe he can sleep later in the morning and get his 8 hours of sleep
Later. Push it back.
Right, right.
Okay.
If he's in a pattern of not being able, working till 12 or something like that at night, which I have a client who does that. He works till 12, comes home, and he needs to unwind, so he doesn't get to sleep before 2. And but what was going on first was that he was waking up at 7.
Wow.
And then he was up, so he really didn't have enough sleep.
Well, how does this program get the brainwaves to behave the way you want them to?
Oh, okay. Well, that's the fun part. Basically, we use electrodes to the brain, and we see what the brain is doing. We set our goals. And the brain fires up anyway. Those beta brain waves are firing up all the time. It's just that we catch them when they're firing up and telling them, we want you to do this more often, with a reinforcement. The person is sitting playing a video game, but they don't have anything in their hands. It's the brain that's controlling the game. So whenever the person gets a point, whenever a light or a color shows on the game, or when they hear a tone, that's telling them that they have gotten to the right place.
So it's kind of like a game train,
right.
a training game.
Right, right. They're very low-keyed. They're not the Game Boy, where you're really trying to kill somebody and do that. It's just a very low-key. And it's supposed to be a very feel-good kind of experience. And if I come in all the time and I say, are you feeling happier or are you feeling sadder? And I try to get people to understand how they're